Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Lakhdar. In minutes, you'll hear how Libyan recruits crossed a frontier of power and claimed Egypt's crown.
Okay, so when you think of ancient Egypt, what pops into your head? Probably pyramids, right? Pharaohs, epic battles against foreign enemies. But what if I told you that one of those enemies didn't just knock at the gate? What if they were actually invited in? And not just invited in, but eventually they took the throne. It sounds like fiction, but that's the incredible and totally true story of Egypt's Libyan pharaohs. This quote, this is the official story. We're talking pure, state-sponsored propaganda, carved right into the temple walls. And the message couldn't be clearer. Libyans are these chaotic invaders, and glorious Egypt, in all its divine might, just absolutely crushes them. This was exactly the image the pharaohs wanted everyone to see. No question.
Right, so for centuries, this was the official line. The state-sanctioned narrative was that the Libyan tribes were this constant, dangerous threat, always pressing in from the western desert. The bad guys, basically.
And, to be fair, this narrative wasn't just talk. It was definitely based on some real, pretty brutal conflict. I mean, the late New Kingdom saw some major wars. You had Pharaoh Merneptah facing this huge coalition. Then, just a few decades later, Ramesses III had to fight off not one but two massive Libyan invasions. So yeah, the threat felt very, very real.
And this wasn't just stuff written down in some dusty scroll. Oh, no. This was basically a state-sponsored media campaign carved in stone for everyone to see. If you were to visit the grand temples at Medinet Habu or Karnak, you'd see these incredible vivid reliefs. They showed Libyans with these really distinct hairstyles and tattoos, marking them as obviously foreign as chaotic outsiders, usually being trampled under the pharaoh's chariot. The whole goal was to show the king as the one and only defender of cosmic order.
But, and this is a big but, here's where the story gets really complicated. Because that official tale of pure, unrelenting conflict, it's really only half the truth. There's a massive paradox hiding right there in plain sight. And this really is the central question of the whole story. Why would you hire your sworn enemy to be your bodyguard? It seems completely counterintuitive, right? But that is exactly what the pharaohs were doing. So here's that contradiction, just laid bare. On the one hand, you've got the public image, aggressive invaders, dangerous barbarians at the gate. But on the other hand, what was the military reality? Well, these so-called barbarians were actually highly valued as elite soldiers, integrated right into the Egyptian war machine. Crazy, right?
So why do it? What's the logic? Well, it all comes down to pragmatism, pure and simple. First off, the Libyans were recognized as formidable fighters, just excellent warriors. Second, Egypt was fighting on multiple fronts, and they needed more soldiers. And finally, hiring mercenaries meant that fewer Egyptian farmers had to be drafted. That kept the local population happy, and it kept the economy stable. It was a calculated risk, for sure.
But see, this calculated risk, it wasn't just a short-term fix. It actually became a long-term policy. It turned into this kind of political long game that, over generations, would completely, fundamentally change the very fabric of Egyptian society in ways no one could have possibly predicted. And it was a slow burn, kind of a four-step process. Step 1, recruitment. They hire these Libyan warriors. Step 2, settlement. These soldiers and their families get settled in dedicated military colonies, mostly in the Nile Delta. Step 3, influence. Over generations, their descendants start to accumulate wealth, land, and real military authority. And finally, Step 4, assimilation. They adopt Egyptian customs, the language. They become, for all intents and purposes, Egyptian. So this is the crucial point, right here. After a few centuries of this, these Libyan Egyptians, they weren't outsiders anymore. Not at all. They were the ultimate insiders. We're talking about generals, powerful landowners, and high-level administrators who also happened to have military power. And they understood exactly how the state worked, from the inside out. And it's that combination, that deep, insider knowledge, paired with military might, that created the perfect conditions for one of the most stunning power shifts in all of ancient history. Okay, so fast forward to the end of the New Kingdom. We're talking around 1077 BCE. Egypt was in decline. The central government was super weak, the economy was struggling, and the whole country was kind of fracturing. And all of this created a massive power vacuum. And then, around the year 945 BCE, the unthinkable happened. A man named Sheshonk I, a powerful general, and, get this, a direct descendant of those Libyan mercenary chiefs. He seizes control. and he declares himself pharaoh, just like that. I mean, talk about the ultimate tyranny. The new ruler of Egypt, the new pharaoh, came from the very same people who were once carved into temple walls as fish flopping on the ground. The enemy had become the king.
So Sheshonk founded what historians now call the Libyan dynasties. And these weren't a flash in the pan. We're talking about pharaohs of Libyan descent ruling Egypt for over 200 years. They adopted all the traditional titles, the royal customs, the religious duties of a pharaoh, but their rise to power completely transformed the political landscape of the country.
This whole incredible turn of events, it really forces us to zoom out, to look at the bigger picture, and completely rethink what we even mean when we talk about ancient frontiers and enemies.
I mean, think about it. What if those so-called invasions weren't just about plunder? Modern research suggests that a lot of these movements were really more like migrations, driven by desperation. As the climate changed and the Sahara got more arid, Libyan tribes were basically pushed toward the fertile Nile Valley just to survive. So was it always about aggression? Sometimes it was just about searching for a better life.
And when you compare it to their other neighbors, Egypt's relationship with Libya was truly unique. To the south, in Nubia, Egypt just imposed direct imperial rule. To the east, in the Levant, it was this really complex dance of diplomacy, trade, and competition. But with Libya, it was this strange mix of conflict and mercenary integration that ultimately led to an internal political takeover. It was a completely different dynamic.
So here's the main takeaway. Ancient frontiers weren't just lines on a map separating us from them. They were porous. They were dynamic zones. They were places of conflict, for sure, but they were also places of exchange and integration. And as this whole story shows, the things happening in these zones could actually reshape an entire empire from the inside out. The story of the Libyan pharaohs is ancient history, absolutely. But it leaves us with this timeless question, doesn't it? How often are a nation's greatest transformations driven not by invaders storming the gate, but by the newcomers who were once welcomed inside? It's something to think about.
Thanks for being here. I'm Dr. Lakhdar Ben Bouzid. For more story-driven history from original sources, hit subscribe and the bell, and continue with the next episode cued on screen.